Carlos Nelson with Cascade Sports, and today we have the honor to have as our guest Dr. Jhon Carlos, 1968. From my perspective, and no matter which one of my shows we talk about, when we start talking about Black Power, I don't know, I feel that a lot of things happen in the Black Power movement, but 1968 was a pivotal point when Jhon Carlos and Tommy Smith held their fists up with those black gloves and the black high socks on, and they got thrown out of the Olympic Village. And that took a lot of courage back then for all you youngsters that have no idea what it was like when they had amateur sports. And we really were not getting the financial benefits that these athletes are getting now. And Jhon Carlos is a iconic figure in sports and in civil rights. Welcome to the show, Jhon.
Well, brother, I'm honored to see you first of all, and then I'm even more honored to be on the show once again.
I want you to talk about your relationship with the two deceased Olympians, Ralph Boston and Herb Douglas. What your affiliation was with them and how they influenced you and the sport.
Well, let's start off with Mr. Boston first. I was a young kid, excuse me, I was a young kid in high school in New York. I made my first trip to Trinidad. I lost my job. My wife was pregnant. I was married my senior year in high school. And I had to go down and see where am I going to find a job. So I realized that I was wearing Puma shoes when I was away in Trinidad, and we lost the job based on the fact that Pan Am Airlines went on strike and wouldn't no airlines accept the ticket. So when I got back, I lost my job that I had at Lenox Hill Hospital. So I went on down to the Puma people and told them I need a job. Well, who are you and why you think we need to give you a job? And I explained to them I was away running outside the country and I was running representing their product. So they gave me a job and I'm running around in the stock room. So in 1964, they had the Olympic trials in Randall's Island. And they had the athletes lodged at Fordham University. And we were up there giving Puma shoes to various individuals. And Ralph Boss was up there and he was looking in his bag for something. I'm checking him out while I'm doing my job. I'm checking him out. I can see he's getting a little disturbed because whatever it was in his bag he's looking for, he couldn't find. And I went over and said, man, what can I do to help you? He looked at me and he said, man, I don't know whether you can help me. I need a 100-foot steel tape measure. He said, I thought I had mine in the bag and I don't have it. So I went to the people I was working with, a guy by the name of Tony Dillon, and said, hey, Tony, I need a 100-foot steel tape measure. He said, for who? I said, for the guy over there, Ralph Boston. He said, oh, we didn't give him nothing, man. He's an Adidas man. We don't get no Adidas man. And I said, oh, slow your roll. I said, I'll do him a favor today. He would in turn do me a favor tomorrow. So we got the tape and gave it to Ralph, and that's how, excuse me, our relationship started. At that particular time, I didn't realize his greatness in terms of individual go to 3 different Olympic Games and come home with a gold medal in 60, silver medal in 64, and a bronze medal in 68. I don't believe anyone in the Olympic history has done that. But Ralph became to be the general, you might say, for amateur athleticism at that particular time, particularly in track and field. He was the master blaster. If you was on the team with Ralph, you knew that you was going to get some comfort. You knew that you was going to get some wisdom, and you knew you was going to get that desire to win because Ralph always had the desire to be a winner.
So, because I'm so much younger than you, and when you really start being successful, all of the young athletes like myself out of Harlem and the Bronx it was like John Carlos, and you went out to San Jose and started really raising hell. And we were so proud of you. That launched you into a whole separate category, and you started meeting world-class athletes. What was that like, Jhon?
Well, first of all, before that, man, individuals such as yourself used to go to McCoon's Park and Van Carlin Park and over in Jersey to run various track meets. I enjoyed reaching back to the younger guys to lend support to them, to talk to them, to make them a little more confident in themselves in terms of where they see me or where they see me going, that the road was open for them to make that same transition. So I always had time for those individuals.
I know you had time for me, and I was a halfway scrub, but with the New York Pioneer Club, which you ran for, I'm saying you was just like an inspiration. I don't care if you was a superstar. You was the inspiration, and I'll never forget when I got in college at Virginia State, and we was invited to a meeting at, I think it's Cole Fieldhouse in Maryland. And boy, you had the swag. I think you had a big fur coat on, and it was like, hey, y'all don't want none of this. And Charlie Green was stationed at a Air Force base, but he was training with Virginia State with me, and he was at that meet. But you came into that meet, it was like, hey, I don't know what y'all here for, but I'm here to take this. And it was so, like, black athletes in the NBA have made the NBA. When you came up, you added all the flavor to track and field. And I mean, Smith didn't sell a bunch of whoop tickets to my knowledge.
Well, what it was,
right out there. And
I felt very strongly that to be an athlete is one thing, but to be a salesman of your product is another thing. It's great that the people would come out as spectators to view what you had to offer, but it's even greater when you can go in the stands with them and sit down and give them some thought and some time with them and show some love, and then run down the steps and tell them, say, my competitors that's at the starting line, say, who's taking second today? Because I done inspired the crowd, and I can't let the crowd down, so I'm letting them know I'm going to run the damn, I'm feeling good, I'm going to run good. And I used to tell them, say, get closer, you get in the picture. Now, certain people thought that might have been braggadocious, but it wasn't braggadocious as much as it was being secure in who I was and knowing what my mission was on that track, not merely to win, but to give the people a good show for the money.
So how did you meet Herb?
Herb Douglas. Man, one more time, I'm serving the public, man. We were at the Olympic trials in Sacramento. I don't recall what year it was. I think it was about 25 years ago. In any case, Dr. Walker, Leroy Walker, which was the head coach of the team in '96 in Atlanta. Herb Douglas, of course. Harrison Dillard, that won the gold medal in the 100-meter hurdles, and then come back and won the gold medal in the 100. So these individuals were standing outside trying to get into the trials. Now, quite naturally, these individuals are pillars of the sport. But when they went to the VIP gate, they were denied. They wouldn't let them in. And they told them to go down to the general admission gate to get in. And they started going, I could see kind of like surprise, bewilderment, and even some shame that they would tell them that they couldn't get in the VIP gate. Well, I stepped up and raised the volume when it was necessary to raise the volume and let them know, no, I'm not going to settle for this, and I'm not going to allow you to disrespect these athletes here, these senior athletes. So Herb Douglas had thought prior to that day that John Carlos was just a loudmouth, he just blowing smoke. But he said from that day, matter of fact, he had been talking to Wami Atias and her husband. And he told them, they said, I really have to sit down and meet John Carlos because I always thought he was blowing smoke, but I see the method in his madness in terms of how he turned up the volume to make them understand that he's serious about what he's doing. And then he said he's a very intellectual individual. And we became bonded from that point on. He became a father figure to me. He became a monitor of balance for me, you might say. He mentored me. And then at the same time, he became a very dear friend to me as well. So I've known Herb now for the better part of 25 years. And I just had the utmost respect for him, admired him, had a lot of fun with him. Went to the service yesterday for him, and it's amazing. It's a tremendous thing when you meet an individual that has touched so many people in so many facets of life, and all of them come together to pay homage and respect to this man. It was a beautiful sermon that they had for him, a beautiful homegoing for him.
Tell me this, Jhon, talk about how did you really become involved in the civil rights movement?
Well, I think I became involved when my mama pushed me out.
Oh, your consciousness, yeah, all right.
Well, when I say I become involved, because that what happened in Mexico City was just another step in my life relative to being involved in the civil rights movement. I think I was involved in the civil rights movement long before I knew what the civil rights movement was. I recall when I was a little kid, there was a cop used to come around and Lenox Avenue and tell us, get off the stoop. You don't belong here. Get off the stoop. And someone would ride up on their horses and tell us that. And my attitude was, hey, man, we're not going anywhere. We live here. You ain't going nowhere. And then the cop got annoyed that I would step up and confront him like that. And when he got annoyed and approached me, the rest of the guys, they got up and they started walking off. And I said to him, I'm not going anywhere. And then he got even angrier. But I had to stop him in his tracks by telling him, say, excuse me, sir, but, I was taught to respect my elders, and you act like you're younger than me. You acting like you don't have any sense. And he took a note of that, and he said, who are your parents? And he took me to my father and started talking to my father. And my father said, well, you got the right one to get your attention. And this cop and my father became very good friends. My father was a local shoemaker in the neighborhood. They began to have lunch together. He would take me like I was his adopted kid, this police did. So I always stood up for the issues that I felt need to be stood for, such as going to breaking the freight trains over there in front of the Yankee Stadium, not because I was a thief or my parents didn't raise me to be that way, but I had so many friends that didn't have food in their cabinets nor clothes to wear to school. And they had these freight trains coming through, so I would bust in the freight trains and get food and give them to the people that didn't have them. So in terms of me being a civil activist, I was that long before I even knew what a civil activist was.
How do you feel that the East Coast athletes, because when I'm 69 through the 70s was my era in track and field, and coming from the East Coast, comparing the athletes that were coming out of the West Coast. See, that's what I'm saying. You was our shining star from the East Coast versus all them athletes that were coming from out West. And then you had went out West. It was like, now everybody was trying to get out West instead of going to these schools back East.
Well, what happened was, excuse me, talking about the New York Pioneer Club, Joe Yancey actually wanted me to go to North Carolina Central. And Dr. Walker would have loved to have had me there, but Dr. Walker said, this young man is out of the box. And I've seen him do quite a few things that's out of the ordinary relative to athletes. And although his talent is wonderful, I don't think that he'd be a good fit with my program because everyone would be trying to do what he does. And I don't think there's anyone out there can do what John Carlos does in terms of how he lives his life and how he competes as an athlete. So then when I went to Jersey and ran, might be the meet that we ran in. There's a fellow by the name of Pete Peterson came and he said, man, where you going to school? And I said, I'm not going to school. He said, well, I think I can get you to school. And he called his coach up at East Texas State University. And the coach called me on the phone and said, we'd like to offer you a scholarship, this, that, and the other. As I stated, we were young. I had a wife, I had a young daughter. And then I said, well, maybe this would be a good situation for me to give my daughter an opportunity to grow up in the countryside, so to speak. I had no idea what Texas was all about. I had no idea about, how racist or prejudiced they might have been back in the 60s. But I gathered my family and I went down to East Texas State. Went down there, the minute I got off the plane, I realized that I made a mistake. But I was never one to go to my mom and dad and say, hey, help me, I need money to get back home. I said, I'll just stick it out. But when I got there, I realized that I was in the deep South. I never realized that Texas was the South at that time. And I saw white restaurants, colored restaurants. White restaurant was pristine, colored restaurant had water running, nets flying, toilet paper on the ground. And then I'm looking at the white water fountain only, and I'm saying, where am I? And then the coach that was talking to me on the phone, trying to recruit me, my name was John Carlos. And then when he saw me, my name changed to boy. This word that they would use was so close to the N-word called Negro. And I really felt downtrodden because I made the mistake of bringing my wife and kids with me, wife and kid, I should say, with me. And I just couldn't turn around.
I forgot that you went to Texas first.
Right. And I turned around after I left there, and I did the job relative to my athleticism. I did the job. I went there and broke all the records. The records still stand today. But it was a no-win situation. I was going to hurt somebody for the way they respond to myself and my kids, my wife. I decided I'd go back to back to New York. When I got there, there was a meeting taking place. A meeting was taking place with Dr. King. And Professor Edwards was going to this meeting, and he called my house, my mom's house, and asked me, would I like to come to a meeting? People asked him to invite me. And when I went down to this meeting, I was blown away because all the people I saw in the room were like luminaries that we used to watch with our parents on TV that was involved in the civil rights movement. And then, after I'm there 20 minutes, 25 minutes, a side door open, and Dr. King walks out into the room. Man, I turned into petrified wood at that time. What am I doing here? I start to get a little nervous. What am I doing here amongst these people? And after the meeting was said and done, Harry said, look, John, I think I can get you a scholarship at San Jose. And I remember I told my father, I said, yeah, Pop, I'm going to San Jose. He used to say St. Josie? You going to St. Josie? I said, no, Pop, that's San Jose, not St. Josie. But in any case, I went down there, met some wonderful people down there, man, that was on the track. I met some wonderful adults that were spectators on the track. We kind of made friends, a bond with one individual down there became my brother, and that's Jerry Williams. I'll always remember, love, and respect the man. He's gone now, but hadn't it been for Jerry Williams and his wife Poochie, I don't think I would have ever stayed at San Jose. Just merely because I confronted Jerry and said, hey man, you know what the essence of a bookend is? And he told me, what are you talking about bookend? He said, you talking about the thing that you put the books between? I said, yes. I said, minus the books. He said, well, what are you talking about? And I said, well, when there's no books, man, you take the bookends and you put them like that. You got my back and I got your back. And when he understood what I was saying, we bonded and we stayed together up until the time he died. So,
what's your most memorable moment in track and field?
Well,
the 68 Olympics.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, my most memorable moment, man, probably the most inspirational moment for me. In high school, they used to have Sports Illustrated magazine used to come out. I don't even know whether they still do this, but in the back of the magazine, they had a section of the up and coming runners. And whether you was a high jumper, shot putter, distance, or sprinter, but the up and coming, they would give them a little play. They would give a little paragraph about them. I think that was probably my most inspirational thing that I remember all my life, that I realized from that point on that I was moving up on the scale to the point where I was recognized, and the publicity that I got from the little article in Sports Illustrated, I realized right away that it's no longer local. It's no longer the New York Pioneer Club. It's a national recognition now. And I felt like, yeah, now I can step into who I really am in the sport.
Was it hard for you to adjust? Most people, and I'm bringing it up, saying I don't want to bring it up, but need to bring it up. After the 68 Olympics, your wife committed suicide. And what kind of pressure was that? Like Colin Kaepernick right now, but and then I forgot what the Muslim brother that basketball. All of them are following in your footsteps, per se.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you follow in Jack Johnson, Muhammad Ali type deal.
Well, I think that, God sent a special blades of grass to society, and I think I'm just happen to be one, such as the individual you just mentioned. We just gonna do what we supposed to do. A lot of times, you sit back and say, it's not necessarily that I want to do it. It's not necessarily I want to be out in the frontier. It's just that it's necessary for me to do. I was built for this. I'm born on this earth for it, and I feel comfortable doing it. And you have to take a lot of criticism from various folks throughout society because they don't understand you in their first sight of you. They don't understand who you are or what you're doing. They think, oh, he's being cocky, or he think he's special, or he think this, he think that. They think all sorts of negative things. And then you have to deal with the fact that there's other individuals that's jealous of you and envious of you, not merely because you did anything wrong, but other than the fact that you're doing something that maybe they would like to do, but they don't have the means or the courage to do it.
I'll never forget, this probably was about 7, 8 years ago, talking to you about other athletes of the era. And you was telling me about how when you go to different cities, countries, whatever, some of them athletes were right there with you. And then they want to get on and take a picture with you and all of that stuff. Now, when they had the same chance to step into the breach and they didn't.
Well, society is funny. For many years after the demonstration, it's like that old commercial when we was kids, they said raid, and you see the roaches running every different direction. Well, when I would walk in the room, not too soon after Mexico, a lot of people were scared to get away from me. And it took me actually 2 years for this to come to a light in my head, for me to realize what was going on. They were running from me not merely because they didn't have love or respect for me, but they were running from me for fear of reprisal for being associated with me. They saw what the government was doing to me. They saw what the Fortune 500 was doing to me. They even saw what layman people in the street were doing to me, and they didn't want to have that on them. They didn't want to bring that into their their family lives. So they ran. But in turn, as you said, a lot of water goes under the bridge, and people realize who you are once the dust settles, and then they almost knock you down. The same people that was running to get away from you almost knock you down to being to put your picture with you today. And I think my personality and my persona is the same today as it was back then. I always had a smile on my face when it was time to smile, and when I had to get stern, I get stern. I'm just going to be who I am, and I'm not trying to be braggadocious or anything. If a kid sees something in me and would like to be me, use me as a role model, come on, because I'm here for you. That's my mission, to be your role model.
I know I was a scrub, and you took time with me, and our relationship has gone a long way. And I just, Norman Tate,
Incidentally, I heard you and Norman's interview the other day. I think y'all did a fantastic job.
Well, I'm saying both of y'all were like inspirations. In New York, you ain't have a whole lot of role models. My people was in the drug game, in the number game.
Right.
And,
but Carlos, when you sit back and you think about what you say your people, you sit back and you say your people, look beyond your immediate family and look at the skin of your people, okay? And realize that we all had to have a 9 to 5 if we can get it, but a 9 to 5 wasn't enough to support what you had to support. If you got 3, 4 kids in your household, you have no food in the household. So a 9 to 5 job, when they're paying you substandard pay, precludes to the fact that you have to have a side hustle. You understand? Everyone had to have a side hustle, whether you wrote numbers or whether you were selling weed or whatever you were selling, you had to have some sort of hustle. The individuals had to go over to the railroad tracks. I remember they used to pull those 6x6s out the ground, little kids would go over there. The white folks that was sending them over there to do the work, they wasn't concerned about. They were youngsters in there. Here, I'm gonna give you $50 if you come over here, and by the time you get home, your hands are bleeding. But you had to do what you had to do as a young kid to take a load off your parents because they couldn't give you money. If they had money, you had to go to the top two. The next two might not get you.
Now appreciate whose shoulders they stand on and benefiting with all this money. And do you think that at even 50% of them are woke to what their responsibility is to their communities?
Well, let me tell you, relative to me, I see a lot of people pay a lot of respect, but I still see that fear in the eyes in terms of really having a real bond or association with me. A relative as to whether they feel that they owe something to their communities, that's yet to be seen, because I don't see a whole bunch of them going back to their communities. Like one guy from your area in particular, when I was there in Kansas, and this individual was there with me. I'm not going to call his name, but he was a superstar. He left your community. He became a superstar in the world of track and field. And I would tell him, say, man, take time, make time, go back and do something to help the kids from your old environment. Because if you don't go back, who is going to go? It's great to hear that, oh, you're a success and you this and you that, but the kids in your neighborhood never get a chance to talk or touch you or ask you questions about how did you get out? What did you do in school? These things are important for our so-called superstars to go back and lay their minds on these young kids and let them know, I am you, you are me. Each one teach one.
Yeah, that's excellent. Jhon, so in closing, what would you have to say to our overall sports audience, and then from a civil rights perspective? Or it can be combination.
Well, let me just go to the sports segment. We've been used so many ways and so long in terms of sports figures. Long before we even became aware that there was dollars involved, and we have to learn what our worth is. We were out there engaging in sports, making a lot of people fat, making a lot of people rich. But until we realize that we have to take the time to educate our kids and push them back into education, make them realize that, hey man, you guys cannot go through school, you must go to school, and make them understand it's a distinct difference in going through school opposed to going to school. If their superstars don't take the time to go back and express to these kids, well, who's going to do it for us?
Yeah, well, as we say in closing, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
Absolutely.
It's a plum pleasing pleasure having you on the show, Jhon.
Hey, Carlos, I got nothing but love for you, brother. You keep doing what you're doing. I love the fact that you never gave up, man. That's one thing about us out of the city, man. We get a hold of some, man, and it's hard for us to do because everybody's throwing boulders in the way, but we have longevity, stick-to-itness. And I remember when you first started your program, and I remember how you was even out of shape doing it because I'm doing everything, eating junk food along the way. But you're matured enough, man, where you slim down now, man. You looking professional. You running a professional program. And I would think that anyone in their right mind would want to come onto your podcast and spread the word and let them know that, hey, man, this is a podcast that I would love to be on because I know they have their hearts in the right mind, the right vein.
You said something that was profound to me. It's like, this is where you're supposed to be. This is like where I'm supposed to be. I tell people I should have been dead like 30, 40 years ago, but this is the mission the Creator's given me, and I understand it. And it's no bucking it. It's no questioning it. It's get with the program and do what you got to do, and be happy that you woke up today.
Carlos, it's amazing, man, when you're in that mode that you're in, I'm in the mode that I'm in, And when you can do something, man, and you feel the shine, man, you feel so good about doing it. And people say, man, I done shot everything at this individual, try to stop him, break him down. But every time I see him, it look like his dimples is getting deeper because he's smiling more. He's so happy with what he's doing. And it looks like, maybe we better back off because by his challenging him, man, doing him, making him stronger, making him more relaxed. And not only that, making him more magnetized. People will start to come in and want to associate and learn from you.
But from age standpoint, I would think, what's for you is for you. And what the creator has for you, nobody can get it. You just need to follow the program.
Well, what a lot of people need to do is take the blinders off. You understand? Because God gave everybody a little basket, like that little Cracker Jack box that we used to get the little toys out of. We didn't want the Cracker Jacks. All we wanted was a little prize inside. Well, God gave us the same type of situation. We have a little basket where he gives each of us gifts. And the sad thing is that many of us are not even aware that we have a basket, much more a gift. You understand? It's like I tell people, I say, man, you play in the basketball game, you play the football game, track team, swim team, the whole nine. I said, you had to work your way onto the team. You had to be gifted into that team. I say, but what's the essence of the game? Why are you there? Well, I'm there to win. You're there to win, right? I said, well, there's a greater game than the game of football or basketball. It's a game called life. When you was pushed out into that game, it wasn't actually that you wanted to be in the game. You was pushed into the game. But the concept has never changed. It should never change. And that concept should be to win. And then we as Black people, we have to take that very seriously into account, that we're in this game of life. Yeah, we got the odds against us in many ways. But if we go with that concept that we're in the game to win, we're going to be all right.
All right. I think that's sufficient and a nice closing statement. And we appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to 2024.
Most def. You take care, Carlos.
This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association. This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association.